because I never realized until my near-death experience how much pain I caused. I caused pain that was so bad, I physically felt I became the pain. That's exactly what happened in that scenario. I became her pain. And it hurt so badly. I remember right after that, they showed me something else, and I just started screaming. I remember screaming, I can't take it anymore. Please, please forgive me. I am sorry. I can't take it. And when I said that, and as soon as I said that I was sorry, I was sorry, I was sorry for the things I did wrong, this veil.
My guest today is Bill Tortorella, who had a near-death experience after an illness. And I'm really excited to dive down deep and learn a lot more about this. So, Bill, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Lori. Nice
So,
being here with
oh, thank you. So, why don't we start with what your life was like? Just give us a little synopsis of what you were like before you had your NDE.
Well, originally, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and in the early 50s. My mom and dad owned a bar and grill across the street from Ebbets Field, where the Brooklyn Dodgers used to play. And I was fortunate enough to go to some of those games before they left and went to Los Angeles in '58. So when they left, I was actually about 6 years old, but I've been going to the games since probably I was four. And my mother had box seats behind home plate. It was really exciting. I mean, that growing up for a little boy is very, very interesting. And as I grew up, I was drawn towards art, and I originally went to art school and graduated the School of Art and Design in New York City. I worked for Triad Studios, which did work for Benton and Bowles. In the early '70s. They were one of the biggest advertising firms in the country. So I had a real nice experience doing that. But I got married when I was about 21, I believe. And I looked at my wife one day after we got home. We both got home late because we were stuck in the trains coming back in the subway in one of the blackouts in New York where you just get stuck, and the train was actually stuffed like a cattle car with people. And when you're in that position for 3 hours stuck like this, it was something you didn't want to do for the rest of your life. So I looked at her that night and I said to her at the time, "Do you want to move to Florida?" And that's how we originally made the move, out of a whim. She looked at me and she said yes. And the next thing you know, we were making plans. 2 weeks later, I already gave the. So 2 weeks later, we were already driving down on the way to Florida. I already gave the 2 weeks notice that Monday going in back to work. And it was exciting. And we got down to Florida, and I couldn't find a job in my career. I was a commercial artist at the time, young commercial artist on the board, doing board work, putting ads together. In Manhattan, I used to work on like cover girl ads. We used to put together the cover girl ads, and that's what I would do. I would do the board work for the layouts of the magazines and everything. The photograph would come in, and they'd set up the type and everything, and I would set how it was going to look. So I looked and looked and looked, and I actually painted on the side a little bit oil painting. So I had a distributor that moved to Florida, and I was occasionally selling some oil paintings to them. Brooklyn Gallery that moved down to Florida and opened a big distributorship in the art field. Anyway, I wound up at a point where I said I had to find something. So my wife got a job right away as legal secretary. I had to find something. So right off the bat, I picked up the paper one day on a Sunday, the Miami Herald, and I come across this ad where it says they need paramedics for the county. And the ad was so it was the county ambulance service. We were actually I was responding to an ad that had it wasn't only the pay, it said it would pay for medical school. So it actually sent me to Mount Sinai Medical School while I was working as an attendant alongside the two paramedics in the unit. So that was a very, very, very interesting job. I mean, it took me to some of the best experiences of my life. Some of the hard experiences was working with people dying on a daily basis. I
Yeah.
must
So
have done.
how did you feel about death at that point in time?
Well, at that point in time, I was still all right. Remember, I was learning, I was excited, I was in medical school, and it was really interesting. But as we went down through the road, and after I graduated my EMT and paramedic courses, I got to a point where when you pick up death every day for years, and we went through all the things in the 70s. I mean, we went through the cocaine wars in Miami, where there were shootings, every weekend, and the nightclubs going on. The people needing, there was so many old retired people down on Miami Beach at the time. We were running, I was doing CPR on a daily basis to people. So after a while, it just sort of gets to your psyche. I was advised and told I have to take a break away from this because you get something called, nowadays they have a name for it, like PTSD. And I experienced that. It was terrible. For many years I dealt with that. Then it finally, after my near death experience, it finally just disappeared.
So
So
the
the
PTSD disappeared after your near death experience, but before you had the near death experience, were you actually afraid of dying? I mean, you're seeing all this death. What do you think of death at that point in time?
Well, I was as normal people. I had a normal fear of dying. I believe everybody has some kind of fear. I do not have any fear whatsoever now. I know I'm going home someday, and where I'm going is beautiful. I've
Mm.
been there before. I know I'll be back, and that's the beauty of the other side. But I don't have any fear at all of dying now. But prior to my near-death experience, I did. I mean, I wouldn't say I was deeply thinking about it all the time, but it comes across everybody's mind once in a while. You know, Basically, I did that job, and I wound up being very fortunate while I was off work because they told me to take some time off, and I was out on like a 60-day, you know, relief. Because I was basically, real quick, I'll tell you exactly what happened. I was in the middle of doing CPR to a man, and the next thing I know, I open my eyes and I'm in another rescue unit. I'm all hooked up with IVs, and the cuff is on me, and they got a D5W stream in me, and I'm saying, I asked the medic, what happened? He said, you and your partner, he said, you were doing CPR on some gentleman, and they said you just passed out and went right out on the floor. And that's actually what happened to me. So we were working shifts too, sometimes 48 hours straight. Sometimes when it was really bad when they had all the problems in Miami during the riots and things, we were sometimes on 3 days straight, with no sleep, not eating right, So what happened was I found out what happened. My blood sugar just crashed, and I had a blood sugar that must have been ridiculous because when they did my glucose tolerance test, my blood sugar was only 25, where it's supposed to be close to 100 or in the 90s. So that's what happened to me on that. And that's why I took some time off. And basically, after that, I went into the business I was in that I did. So I'll bring it right up to I went into the jewelry business after that. And I'll bring it right up to the near death experience now. So it's years and years later. It's in 1994. Now I'm in Tucson, Arizona, and we're doing one of the You know yourself, Lori. It's one of the biggest gem shows in the world, actually.
Yeah, it's like two and a
The
half
whole,
hours away from me.
I haven't did it in many years. Does the whole city still become a show?
Yes, I'm probably even more so than before. When you get those guides, it's like this building and this building, you go to them and you're like,
Yeah,
where am I?
oh,
It's so
it's
weird.
amazing. It's amazing. It's the biggest show in the world to, buy gems. And there's some jewelry people like myself that go there to set up. And we were set up in a place called the Holodome. It was actually a big tent because you couldn't get into the convention center. And all the city hotel ballrooms were filled. And the Holodome wasn't an outdoor. It was outdoors, yes. It was on the desert ground, but they put a floor in. They put the tent up and they was bringing in air, like air condition and heat. And for some reason, I don't know whether it was that or whatever, somebody told her the filters might have been bad. I have no idea. But we're into the show now a couple of days and it's really busy, doing well. Everything is going fine. And then people start coughing all around. I hear people coughing and hacking, and then people starting feeling sick. And I was good up until the third day. And on that day, while I was at work, the lady right across the way from us, she just keeled over. So I went over to her right away to make sure she was all right. I didn't know when she fell down, I couldn't see her. So I didn't know if she was having maybe a seizure or something like that. I just wanted to put her in a comfortable position, make sure her airway was open and she was breathing right until the paramedics got there. So that's what I did. And the people that were working with her told us she's been sick since the first day she got there, you know? So they came and got her. It was the next day, I believe. So I'm in the beginning of the fourth day of the show, and I feel so sick. I mean, my throat is so swollen, I can't even hardly breathe. And that's how bad it is. The pain going through my body was incredibly bad. So we didn't know if this thing was viral or bacterial at the time. I had no idea. All I know is I was sick as a dog and I was running a fever. I didn't have a thermometer with me at the time, but I was hot as can be. In the hospital when I went there, I think my fever at one time was 104, but then it came down. But it was a high fever. So I went to the hospital. What happened was we're sitting there waiting for a while. There was a lot of people waiting. And they asked some people if they would go and we go to the medical centers. So I agreed to go to the medical center because I want to be seen quicker. So when I got to the medical center, I think they brought us over in a van or put us in a bus or something like that. Different centers they had across town because evidently this thing was spreading. Every year it gets bad for some reason. We do the show and people from all over the world come. So what happens is, people bring in other things. You don't know what someone's carrying. And anyway, so they take it to a medical center. They set me up on a gurney right away. They said to me, your oxygen levels are terrible. They hooked me up with a saline solution and D5W, and then they start pumping in antibiotics. And they must have gave me, I remember, because I remember 2 full bags, maybe working into midway of the third bag before they said everything was back to normal. My vitals looked better. I was coming around. My oxygen levels were back up. And then what they did, because it was a center that closed in the evening, so you couldn't stay there overnight. They said to me, your oxygen levels are good. We had you on antibiotic, for several hours now, and they said, if you feel this way in the morning, or if you feel like you did when you came in, basically, he said, get back to the hospital. So I went back to the hotel where I was staying, and I wasn't with anybody in that time. Usually my wife is with me. She was home pregnant and going through some terrible morning sicknesses, so she couldn't come on the trip. But I had people working with me, and they were staying in the hotel next to me, but not in my room. And what happened is, Lori, that night turned into a night of light and love, I call it. It was magnificent. I'm about to tell you one of the most unbelievable near-death experience stories you might have ever heard. I remember distinctly, I remember how I left my body. And I left my body through my eyes. Now, some people tell me I left through my penal,
Third eye, your third eye?
the third eye. Now
Okay.
they tell me this, but I had no way of knowing that. All I recognized it as I was in. I left my body, and I heard myself just out of my body, and this beautiful, beautiful, magnificent. It was almost like the color of a fern glowing in spring. That green, but magnified 100 times. It was so beautiful. It was more or less like a neon bright, but seemed brighter than that. The beauty of it was unbelievable. And now I am part of this mist looking down upon my body. So I'm looking down upon my body and I'm hovering. I remember distinctly. At this time, I still recognize it's me, my body. And I remember looking at this body and it's all looked like it's dead or halfway dead. And I believe what happens is all of a sudden this beam of light came from behind me and everything lit up underneath me. So I believe what happens is the spirit waits around the body long enough to realize. Once the spirit realizes the body has no life in it, then it leaves to go home. So I was turned. And when I was turned, I don't remember turning, it just turned me. And this beautiful, beautiful gateway opened with colors and light. And I was drawn into this tunnel so quickly. The tunnel was made up of amazing, amazing color. It was the most beautiful colors you've ever seen. And I was part of this color. And I'm already feeling this love at this time now. This love is just building and building and building. And now I start moving. And I'm moving at speeds that are so incredible. It feels like I'm moving at the speed of light. The colors are going by me and through me, and I keep moving, and I feel nothing but loved and embraced. I almost feel like I'm a child and I'm being cradled by someone. I found out who that was after I arrived, but I'm traveling faster and faster and faster. And it was magnificent because the love kept growing and growing and growing. And I said, I am love to myself. It was magnificent. And I'll never forget the point of arrival. And I'll call that heaven because I believe in God. I believe in angels. And I said to myself, and I could hear it out loud over and over, I'm home. I'm finally home. Thank God I'm home. And I said it again. And it was just unbelievable. There were spirits all around me. And then I hear a soft voice saying, yes, Bill, you're home in the light of God. And these spirits around me, I knew they were family and friends. Now, I got to understand this, Lori. So I'll tell you something different than I've ever told anybody else.
Oh, I love
You
that.
recognize,
Okay.
no one's got this on any of my podcasts. You recognize your family up there 100%, but you recognize them in their spirit that you've known for thousands and thousands of years. Because I believe, and that was one of the things I was taught, that we travel with our spirit circle. And I've never told that in the thing. I
I
keep
I
some things
believe
out
that
for
too,
a reason.
Bill. I really, really do believe that we travel with
Oh,
them. Do you think that some of them don't incarnate with you in each lifetime?
I don't know the answer to that question because that's possible. Because you recognize the spirit. So they're your family. So you could say, yes, they're my family on earth, but they've been your family throughout the ages or the millennia, however old you might be. We might be tens of thousands of years old. We have no idea the age. All you recognize up there, sometimes that you do recognize older spirits and younger spirits. The older spirits have more wisdom. But the thing about the family is so strong, Lori, and so beautiful. It's the most beautiful. It was one of the most beautiful parts of and they'll communicate back and forth. And Antonia, who was my first guide, she explained to me why I felt so cradled. I felt so cradled coming back home. She says, I was with you all the way home. You were with me. And I had no idea. I had no idea I was traveling with another spirit at the time, or an angel. I had no idea whatsoever. And she introduced herself as Antonia. And that was she also introduced herself and told me I had two other guardians. And when she said she had two other guardians, I see this spirit approaching me, and with his voice was, hello, Billy. It was my brother Peter's voice, the one that I grew up with when I was a little boy. He was closer to me than actually my father was, because my father was always a busy person, because he was president of one of the Teamsters unions in New York. And my brother's the one that took me to everywhere. And I know Peter's voice. So whether my spirit family wanted me to hear his voice and make me comfortable, but I was already comfortable. Don't forget, Lori, I'm feeling nothing but love and just joy, just complete joy. And then Peter said to me, it's time for your life review at this point. At this time, we're actually physically communicating with telepathy. There's no bodies at this point. We're looking at each other and communicating with telepathy in spirit form, and it's magnificent. It's beautiful. He takes me to another plane where it was all bright. And then he says, your life review. And I remember distinctly thinking in my head, but I'm hearing it, and he's hearing it too at the same time. He said, Bill, this is where they show you the good you've done in your life and the wrong you've done in your life. And I didn't quite understand what that was at that time, but I had no control over that part. And it started a process of showing me clip after clip after clip of my life cycle from when I was a little boy. It showed me good things I did with my friends and family. And at this time now, for the first time, this is the first time since I have left that I see myself back in my body. So the first time I realized that I'm back in my body, I'm not back in my physical body, but I appear to see myself in my body. So they're showing me things like, we used to take my friends out because my mom, she made out all right. My dad was all right. We weren't rich people by any means, but we were comfortable. We were a comfortable family. So she had some extra money to give once in a while. And when she gave me money, I took my friends out because a lot of them didn't have any. And we just went out everywhere. We went to the movies. We went to one time when we got older, we went to the World's Fair. And in 1963, I think it was, I took them to the World's Fair, and that was beautiful. And they used to go to Coney Island, ride the rides. They show me these little clips throughout my younger years, and then into my teen years. They're showing me things, and that was just a wonderful thing over and over again. And then it got to the years where I passed my schooling and I moved to Florida, and I became a paramedic. And the next clip it stops at, and it shows me I'm sitting in my unit across from my partner, and there's a call that comes over the radio at the time. I picked up the mic, and I said, this is 67F. We were just heading up to our station up in North Miami Beach. We're on I-95. And we were on about 79th Street and I-95 when the call came over the radio. They said it was a 317, which is an emergency car accident on 135th Street and 95. So it's less than 2 miles away from us right now. And we're moving because by that time, we were already at about 90th Street. So I pick up the mic and I say, call off 69F. This is 67F. We're going to take the call. So my partner and I, we just look at each other, and he wails it. He puts the siren on, and I'm holding on because we're moving quickly in and out of traffic. And I got there literally less than 2 minutes away. We jumped out of the unit. I got my medic bag, and I see the sun I thought he was the son, but he was her brother. And he was running around frantically. And we thought he was hit because he had some abrasions on him and he was cut. So we directly went to him. And he turned around to us and he's pointing at my sister, like this. And both Danny and I, we just went like this together. And we saw his sister's head through the windshield. Her head was physically through the windshield, all the way back to the back part of her head. Now, the inside of her head was inside. The top part of her head was flapped over the outside. And we said, oh my gosh, the glass itself is in her skull. So Danny looked at me. I looked at him. I said, Danny, we have to, he looked, let's get her. So he jumped inside. I went outside. I lifted the top of her head and passed it through to him gently. And he tried to hold it down as best he could. We put her on the stretcher and ran her over to the unit. Got a bunch of gauze pads and I put them on top of her head. At this time, she's knocked out. She's out cold. And I got some gauze pads and now I'm trying to put the gauze pads on. She's in the unit. Her brother's sitting in the back with me. Her brother's sitting in the back looking out the back window because he didn't want to face his sister. And now her body starts to seize. Luckily, we were so close to the Parkway General Hospital at the time. I'm holding her head down. She goes into a seizure, and now it's almost impossible to hold her. So I wrap my other arm around her. I cradle the back of her neck so she doesn't snap her neck off. And I'm holding the top of my hand on the gauze pads down, and I scream out. God, help me. And I was talking to the brother. But in my life review, I physically see Peter's hand come in with my hand in my life review. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen because in my spirit, the hair on my arms are standing up. I mean, so that was beautiful. And so they show me these good things. And then they show me the other side. Well, the other side wasn't as comfortable as the good side. The bad things you do in life and the wrong things you do. It gets to you, doesn't get to you while you're doing them because sometimes you're young and dumb and just do stupid things when you're younger, like everybody does, I think. But I got to say, thank God, I don't feel in my life that I've hurt people, yes, in my lifetime. And the experience of that was so mortifying to me because I physically became their pain, their physical pain I became. As they're showing me these clips of things I've done, one after the other, then it got up to my marriage. And when I was married, I did something very, very bad, which I still feel bad for. I had left my wife with my first son when I think he was only about 2 years old. And I got to say, I think I was about 25, 26, 27 at this time. I'm not exactly sure. And, when I was the paramedic, I think, and I just decided I want to leave and I left. It wasn't for anybody. I think we got married young, what happened. And, you never lived on my own. I never did any of those things. So inside, that's when you get selfish and things like that pour into your life. And you don't even think you're hurting anybody. And you try to make it right when you're leaving and do the right thing. But it's never right because I never realized until my near-death experience how much pain I caused. I caused pain that was so bad, I physically felt I became the pain. That's exactly what happened in that scenario. I became her pain. And it hurt so badly. I remember right after that, they showed me something else, and I just started screaming. I remember screaming, I can't take it anymore. Please, please forgive me. I am sorry. I can't take it. And when I said that, and as soon as I said that I was sorry for the things I did wrong, this veil just dropped. and now we're back in our spirit form again. It's like, and I heard a voice, it was either my brothers or Antonia saying, "You did well, Bill," or something like that. You did good. Uh, thank God I did those things and that work, because I feel over the hundreds and hundreds of times I tried to save someone's life, I did a lot of good for people. And I showed a lot of love my whole life, no matter what. I've always showed love to everybody that I possibly could. But you go through that wrong and right thing. It's tough. It's tough when you get to the bad stuff. You know, you get to a point where when you want out and you're not desperate, but you feel, like I said before, you feel the pain within inside yourself. So now we're back in spirit form. And I remember Antonia saying, "Look at yourself, Bill. Look at yourself." And remember, I told you I was this glowing mist and it was beautiful. Well, now I look like them. I'm a beautiful beam of this fluorescent green. I turned into a beam. It was like you almost graduated because you did something right. I don't know what it was, but I turned into this beautiful, magnificent beam. And that part was phenomenal. And then Peter explained to me, you have someone else in your life that's been with you your whole life, every day, all the time. And that's when he announced Orin, my third card. And when this, I'll say man, I don't know, you don't know in spirit form a lot if it's man or woman until you hear voices within your head, their voices. Sometimes you just get their feelings in your head. And he approached me, and I knew this person my whole life. I knew his spirit. I didn't know this person physically. I physically knew his spirit. And he was the angel that sat on my shoulder that told me, "No, no, no, Bill, that's the wrong thing to do. Your intuition is probably the most important thing to learn while we're here on earth, because that's connecting us to the other side." See, God gives us one power here. While we're here on earth, God gives us the power of choice. That's where everything gets screwed up. We see everything before we come down our whole life. That's why we have deja vu so much. We know what we're coming into, and we think it's going to be really easy on the other side. But when you get on this side, the thing of choice screws everything up. And that part is unbelievable, because that's been so strong in my life, that intuition part, that I'm very, very lucky and fortunate I've had that. Because as I was growing up in later teens in New York and Brooklyn, things got a little hairy in some cases, and some of my friends went down the wrong road. And I had, I believe, my angel Orin sitting there and telling me, "No, no, no, Bill, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that," and over again. And it was so strong, it was unbelievable. So that part is important. I wanted to get that out too, because I never explained that and other, how that really works.
Oh,
The
I feel
other
so lucky that you're explaining these things with such detail. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
it's important to explain that. I have the book that explains it really well. But
Mhm.
the thing that Oren said is that we are now going to a final level where you are going to be shown things. And I didn't know if they were going to show me my life events again or what. But now they bring me to this place. It feels like I'm in a crystal city. It was beautiful. It was like crystals reflecting the light of the universe. I can't explain that part because it was so magnificently beautiful. Everything was crystal, and it was magnificent. And we're there, and all of a sudden it feels like we're in this gigantic auditorium. And then it starts almost like a in the old days when I was younger, I would say it was like in the movie reels when they used to flicker so fast. But let's explain it today like it's in the computer when it's moving so fast at speeds. Sometimes you get that, you watch that thing on the computer and The computer's moving at speeds that you can't even, impossible to keep up with. I mean, so fast. But now they're taking me. Now I'm physically going for a ride, and that's not a ride of my lifetime. This is a ride of the world's lifetime. I'm telling you, they took me to places I have never remembered being. Like I know I wasn't in World War II. I don't know, or the Korean War. I know I wasn't in those things, but I remember in this Hall of Events. So some people call it Akasha Records.
Mm-hmm.
I recognized it as Hall of Events for some reason, but they call it Akasha Records. But I had an experience in Akasha Records. We were on a ride, and it was unbelievable. Again, from scene to scene, and the scene would just stop and end and bring you to another scene. They took me to my birth. They took me to my birth. I went through my birth, growing up. Now they're showing me things that happened in the 60s. So I was born in 52. They're showing me things that happened in the 60s. I remember this because I remember sitting in my classroom and it coming over the speaker in the classroom that John F. Kennedy was just shot. And I remember that feeling that everybody had at that time. And from there that day, they dismissed the whole school, and the whole school went home because it was a very bad thing. A lot of people, loved that president. We went from that clip. I mean, and then it started showing me things that going into the future. I'm going through the 80s. Don't forget, we're going through the 70s. We're going through Vietnam. We're going through seeing things. I remember seeing the end of the Vietnam War. I remember the helicopters. It's showing me the clips that I saw years and years and years ago on TV, like in 1974, whenever the end of the Vietnam War was. I remember seeing that. So going from that, it takes me past my near-death experience. And this is 1994 when I had the near-death experience. It takes me and stops here. This is where it stops. It stops at 9/11. Now, I'm very familiar with that site because I was in those buildings many times about visiting my friends. I used to have very close friends there, and I went on vacations with them. When they did the company vacations, we went on ski vacations, all kinds of stuff, and it was unbelievable. And they take me there, and there's debris all around, and we're standing there. We're physically standing there. It looks like, and Orion says, "What do you feel, Bill?" And I says, "Nothing. I feel nothing." He says, "What do you see, Bill?" I says, "I see everything." And I seen, it was so dark and everything, but we seen everything. We seen people running, the debris coming down so hard, but it's almost like we could almost see through it. And I started to run. I remember having that feeling. Now, I don't know if I was running because I was afraid or I was running to help my friends. I remember saying, my friends are in that building, over and over to them. And they said, "You can't do anything, Bill. Stop again. What do you feel?" They said it to me twice. 2 times I got that. And I said, "Nothing." It says, "Because we're not here now." And I didn't understand what that was because it seemed awful real to me. Okay. But then we went from there. And the next stop was, I feel that it must have been Baghdad because of the way people were dressed. There was bombs going off, and now it must be 2002, I think, when they were bombing Baghdad. And the bombs are going off all around us. And again, instinctively, I start to run. I'm feeling and looking like I'm in a body, but I'm not really in a body. I'm watching this. But it feels like you're in your body in this review. So that part was amazing. It brings me to different things that happened along the way. I don't remember seeing anything about the financial crisis or anything like that, but I believe the next stop it bring me to was these times. The reason why I say is these times, because we're at a place in time where we're supposed to be in an ascension. We're supposed to be raising our level of spirituality. And in a way, we are, because people are waking up all over the world. They're waking up to this new ascension. You know, we're in the period of Aquarius starts. Now, there was a song in the 60s, The
Age of
Dawning of
Aquarius.
Aquarius, the
Yeah.
fifth dimension. Yeah. And we're in that period now. We just left. That period starts this month or the end of this month. So we're in that age of ascension where we're supposed to be. I can tell you what I know is, and what I feel deep in my heart, because they showed me two possible outcomes here. I was shown two possible outcomes. One that was terrible. And I'm not saying we're not going to have that, but I don't believe we're going to have that. One was like a Mad Max scenario. It was that bad, where people would fight and literally kill over water, food, when a life is worth nothing. And the other was a beautiful utopia, the utopia that was supposed to be living in this ascension through a higher plane. So if we are traveling to the fifth dimension, where we're supposed to be now, we're supposed to be acting a totally different way in our lives. Our choices have to turn around and become on the path of more of a spiritual path than one of doing harm to someone or hurting or killing or anything in that form. But the two possible events that they showed me was that. Those are two possible outcomes, because we're always on the reality of two different outcomes, sometimes three different outcomes, sometimes four. They showed me these things. I'm bringing things up to you that I haven't brought up ever before. They showed me different events at different times in the event, in the physical event. They showed me different outcomes of that event, different ways of going into that event. Like one other way, when I was back in 9/11, they brought me to we were watching it on TV because we were on our way into Manhattan that morning to buy goods. My wife and I, because we had some distributors in New York that we were buying from, and we were on our way to physically go. We were at my mother-in-law's house in the Poconos in Pennsylvania. And when we came downstairs that morning, my mother-in-law screamed us to come downstairs, and it was on TV. And I'll never forget that. That was another thing they showed me. That was just another parallel. It was different parallels in every single section of things they showed. So it's amazing what happened, because I believe that all has to do with our choices, our personal choices. Our personal choices are going to predict the outcome of this world that we're in now. Okay, our spirit lives and grows through a process of choice. It's a learning process of choice. As we make these choices in our life, our spirits go to different levels of enlightenment. So it's very important that, we try to stay on the light path, because it's very tempting sometimes to go to the dark side. And I know what people are going through. I know what temptation is. Everybody does. Okay, but we have to learn how to stay where we're going to be kind. We're going to be God. We become God. We become not God, physical God. We become like God. We become more like Jesus was. We're becoming a loving, whole spirit. At one time during this whole process, I remember saying to them, the three of them, when we were all together at one time, I remember saying, I asked them if they were the Holy Trinity. I wasn't a real big church grower, but I did my Holy Communion. I grew up Roman Catholic, but now I would say I'm more Christian. But I asked them if I was talking to Jesus, and they just kept going, explaining things to me. And then the final thing was this: that the whole event is now finished, and they bring me to a place where it's absolutely beautiful. And now I'm around a magnificent panel of angels, all white. I haven't seen this yet since I've been there, except my personal angels, had more white in their hue than the other I would call the rest of us spirits. And we were beautiful, magnificent color. It was amazing. We were the colors of the universe. If you take a nebula and magnify that 1,000 times, that beautiful nebulas that they get from the Hubble telescope and the stars, they bring me in front of this panel and they said, this is where wisdom is formed. And that's where they taught me 9 principles of enlightenment. And these 9 principles were just wonderful. They're so important. If we follow these principles, these 9 principles, our world could go to that utopian plane that we're supposed to be in. So that's our idea, what we're supposed to. And then they showed me things along this path. And it's beautiful. One of these angels comes right to me. I felt like the angel was literally inside me, explaining. And I'm seeing waterfalls of beautiful numbers in crystal falling in front of me. And numbers are lighting, 1s, 8s. 1s, 8s lighting up a lot. And then 9 would pop, the 9 would pop, the 9 would pop. Then the 1s and the 8s would go by again. And then I'd see all the numbers, the 6s, all the 5, that they weren't lighting as bright. The 9s, then the 6s, then the 3s, all these numbers, like the Tesla numbers. Nicholas Tesla had 2 near-death experiences in his life, and I believe that's where he found these numbers at. Because the core numbers in the universe, the core is 369. It's 36 is the bottom of our triangle. And if we're going to talk about vibrations, we could go into that level too. But the top peak is 9. 9 is the highest number of the universe. So no matter what you do, every single thing comes to 9. Every single measurement in the universe, the reason why we breathe and have water to drink is because of the 369. And I'll explain that really quick. Because the 1 and the 8, the 1 represents God. Well, in the Christian Bible, it does. It represents God. But you see these numbers 1 and 8 all through all religions. You see 108 in Buddhism. You see 108 in Hinduism. These numbers are in that religion. And they have, everything is tied around the 108 in Buddhism and Hinduism. Everything. They have on their prayer beads, and the Buddhists have 108 beads where they recite 108 prayers. In Hinduism, they have the 108. If you go into any of their chapels, places of worship, they have 108 steeples. And they have 108 mantras they have to recite and learn in their religion. You got to understand something. These religions are almost 2,000 years old, not quite. But, Christianity's a little older, I believe. I'm not exactly sure on that one, okay? But this 108 is so important. The reason why is because it's the definition of everything. It gives you the 369. Now, I'll explain in short how, okay? If everything wasn't designed with these numbers, our Earth would cease to exist. We wouldn't have seasons, we wouldn't have tides. Because if you take, for example, you take the distance from the moon to the Earth, and I think the distance is like 233,000 some odd miles. And you divide it by the diameter of the moon, which is 2,160, it comes to 108. The radius of our moon is 108. Now let's go the opposite way. You take the Earth to the sun. The sun is 93 point some odd million miles away from Earth, supposedly, okay? And you take the diameter of the sun, which I believe is 644,000. I don't look at any notes, so don't hold the exact number here. But when you get the exact number, if you look it up, you divide the distance by the diameter of the sun, and it's 108. So without that alignment, God made this so perfect. He made our alignment so perfect and gave us such a beautiful earth that we live on, that we live and breathe because of this. Because just like I said before, we would have no tides and we would have no seasons. So the earth would actually cease to exist. So that's how important that 1 and the 8 are. So the 1, let me go back to it. 1 represents God, 8 represents eternity. It's 1 and 8 for eternity. Our core numbers are 36. The 3 are the bottom part of the pyramid, and the 6. The top part is 9. The highest and most knowledgeable number is 9 in the world. Everything, 9 is not the prime number, but 9 is the number of enlightenment. And that's why my book is called The Ninth Level of Enlightenment, The Wisdom of the Light. And after the numbers, they tell me my life path number was number 3. That was my life path. I had no idea what that meant. And my alert sign. They gave me an alert sign while I was there. The angel that was showing me the numbers physically gave me an alert of 66. He says, when these numbers are around you, you have to be aware of things happening. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It does, by far, does not mean it's bad. It could be very, very good too. So my alert numbers were 66. That was supposedly them trying to get something to me, a message from my angels. Now, the reason why I knew that one right away is because I had that number by me my whole life. And it wasn't because of Route 66. It was because everything important that ever happened to me in my life, big events or good events or very bad events, that number would pick up maybe during that week time. Maybe I'd see it 5 times, 10 times during the day in one cycle. Sometimes I see it in 3-minute cycles apart, 3, 3, and 3. It would pass every 3 minutes, the number somewhere. And I wasn't nothing to do with it. I'm watching on something on TV and I see this 6 pop up in some form or other, or I'm on the road and I look up and it's exit 66. I look down at my speedometer, I'm going 66. So that's how clear this thing was. That 66 was very clear to me already. And then the final and ending is a young, beautiful spirit approaches me. The 9 principles are very important. We have choices. I actually told you all the principles already along the way, but you have your choices. Your first principle is the principle of, it's like the first principle in the 10 Commandments. You cannot take one's life because you cannot change their life path, because you don't know what the grandson or granddaughter might have been the person that created something so important, the real cure for cancer or other terrible diseases. So you don't know if you've changed that path by taking someone's life. So they explain that to me over and over again. I mean, they really let me know that you can't take that away. And choices, that's how I explained it earlier in our conversation, how important choices was, right? But it gets so deep, it's incredible. The choices are so deep because that's the different levels of things we're on all the time. So we're always on these different planes. It's our choice which one we want to take. So that's where you have to listen to the next thing that comes up is your intuition. Your intuition will guide you on that right choice to take. And then, of course, the spirit with the kindness comes in and all that. So all those are the principles, the 9 principles. But the 9 principles are very, very important to learn. And the earth is probably one of the most important principles to be aware of. The earth itself is a spirit. The earth is alive. The earth breathes. The earth gives us life. Without her streams, we would cease to exist. We wouldn't have any water from our veins and the oxygen from our trees. And that's why we got to be growing trees all the time and keep this earth in good shape. We have to keep the earth in good shape. And I think a lot of people are just doing that now automatically because they want to. Spirituality is really raising at a pace that I'm trying to keep up with here because I try to follow literally thousands of people. And I see differences in people now along the way. And it might be because of fear. You know, people are a little afraid of what's going to happen, of one of the outcomes, you know? But people are getting aware and they're waking up. And that's what we want. We want this ascension, because once we have this ascension, we'll be all right. Everything will be good. I feel in my heart, I saw two sides on the other side, but my heart, I know where we're going. We're going to a higher plane. We're in that fifth dimension starting now, and it's just the beginning. It's going to get nothing but better from here. We might have a little rocky road the next couple of years or so, but it's only going to get better and better and better after that. We have our children to worry about. We have our kids to worry about. Final thing, and I'll be done. I'm sorry I kept you so long. But the beautiful little spirit approaches me while I'm there. Now, I've told this one before someone, but this was the most important one for me personally. She says to me, "You understand the 9 principles of enlightenment?" I said, yes, I understand them fully. I'm aware. You must return. Just like that. And I literally stood there. I remember fighting. I felt like I was fighting for my life because I didn't want to come back. That was my home. I was home. I wanted to stay. You know, when you feel like that's your home and you want to stay, that's your home. So, you know, the unbelievable thing is she said that to me 2 other times. And then on the 3rd time, she said, "Dad, you must go home." And the next thing I know, I'm being pulled back through this vortex. And I didn't know what she was talking about, whether she was talking about Dad because my son was about to be born, you know, or whatever. But it happens that her birthday was some years later, and she was born on 2000 on the 6th month and the 6th day.
Of course she was.
And that's my story.
All right, you almost made me cry. Like when you started talking about her and she told you had to go back and the importance of the 9 principles, like I started to get tears in my eyes. Bill, you started our conversation and you said to the audience, my near-death experience is one of the most incredible that you'll ever hear. I personally have listened to, read about, watched over 1,000 near-death experiences. Some people have a tunnel experience. Some people meet a passed away loved one. Some people meet a spirit guide. Some people see angels. Some people go to a crystal city. Some people have a life review. Some people go to the Hall of Records or Hall of Events and experience future events. Bill, you did all of those things. And I have to say, of all the near-death experiences I have listened to, you are correct. Yours is one of the most incredible. But what makes it even more incredible than all of those things are those 9 principles in addition to all of this that you've been asked to bring back. And I know you said, I'm sorry I kept you so long, but you should see my list of questions that I have that I want to ask you. So I hope you have some time because I really want to dive in and ask you some deeper questions, maybe than you've been asked before. And I also want people to still read your book because it's like watching a movie after you've read the book. It's never as good because we just don't have enough time for probably 9 or 10 hours of reading time that you've put into this.
Yeah.
So I am going to promote your book right here and say, read this book to get the details of all the 9 principles so you can learn about this and how he talks about the events and everything. But so I want to talk about that. But do you have some time now?
Yes.
Okay, let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
And you mentioned that you were going into this gateway before you entered the tunnel. What was the gateway? What do you think that was? Was that kind of like the veil between here and the other dimension, the other side? What do you think the gateway was?
I hear other people talking about a veil. I don't remember ever having any kind of veil. Remember, like I said, I was floating above my body, looking down upon myself. And when the light came from behind, it just turned me. And in front of me was this tunnel, this beautiful gateway that opened, a circular gateway of beautiful colors, just circling. Like I have a website out there, it's billtortorella.com, and you'll see that on my website if someone pulls it up. And
Is
that's
it
what
kind
I
of like
call the
that?
gateway. Yeah, very similar, but with beautiful colors.
Right.
Beautiful, glowing, neon, magnificent colors.
So cool. Okay. You talked about Peter, your
Yes.
brother, and
Yes.
how he was on the other side. So was there a big age difference between the two of you?
Oh, yes. Literally, my brother was 16 years older than me.
So that explains it being more like a
Oh,
father, like you
yeah,
said.
that's exactly why. Because
And
he's the one that took me to all my ball games, and he took me to everywhere, everything that was going on. He taught me how to pitch when I was a pitcher because he was a pitcher in his life. So, he was just a great brother. He was like so close, and he died of a cancer that just came on him so quickly. And when he was 30 years old, he just died.
he is now on the other side and he comes through.
Yeah.
And because of what you described later, while you saw his hand come
Yeah.
down,
In the
it
life review. Yes.
yes, so it sounds to me like he is functioning as a guide for you from the other side. Would you agree?
Well, he is one of my guides.
He is one of your
So
guides.
is Antonia and Oren, the tuition.
So I want to point this out because when people lose someone, we grieve a lot, not just because they're not going to be in our lives anymore, but
Oh,
because we feel like they may be gone forever. The most
yes.
popular video on my entire channel of at this point in time 140 some videos is
Right.
one where I talk about signs from my passed away loved one, who I
Oh,
believe has become my guide
guide.
based on
Yes.
everything that I've seen. So I feel like you sharing this part of the story gives people a lot of hope that when they've lost a really good friend, when they've lost a sibling, when they've lost somebody that they hold dear to them, that
Absolutely.
person may be guiding them. And did you have an
That's
inclination?
the love you feel sometimes from them
Yes.
too. While you're alive, you could feel them.
Did you have any inclination before your near death experience that Peter was already one of your guides?
No,
You didn't know
no, not
that.
at all. I always prayed and I always had Peter in my prayers. That's the only thing I could think of, you
Wow.
know?
How special to have uncovered and absolutely know without a doubt that he is on the other side guiding you. So you're in this area and Orin, Tonia,
Antonia,
Antonia
the spirit that took me,
were
they come and guide you back. Because I guess maybe the tunnel's a little narrow. It's hard to guide through yourself. But remember when I said I felt like I was being cradled and protected? That was her. I had no idea, bud.
hmm,
We were all in spirit form, but I was being held and brought through there and like flowing and like it was the speed of light. It was moving at speeds, but at the same time, it was moving at speeds. You didn't feel any wind or anything like that. It's the craziest thing. The colors were whizzing by and through you. You could see everything moving. So you're moving so fast to get to our destination of heaven, what I'll call that's the destination.
I love that. So you uncover these people that are part of your soul family. Now, I've talked a lot on my channel in different videos about soul families. I
Yes.
would like to hear your perspective of what you believe a soul family is, because I don't think it's like the family that you have on earth is your soul family. I think there's
Right.
certain people that we encounter throughout our lives and maybe never incarnate with us that are part of
Oh,
our soul
absolutely. So, so this is how I believe it works because this is how it was explained to me. Your your spirit is close to others on the other side as it is on this side. You'll notice yourself gravitated to people here. And then some people you could distance yourself or wouldn't have no need for. You feel that. You physically feel that while you're here on earth. People that are supposed to be in your spirit circle, your spirit family, I have to be honest about one other thing. I believe. I believe that in some families, that all families are not within their own spirit circle.
Wow. So I think soul mates are different than the very, very close soul family. So I think that when we have our lifetime here, we uncover lots of different soulmates, like maybe our parents, our siblings, cousins, all those things. But then you could have somebody who's not even related to you that might be a mentor that
Right.
is so pivotal in
Yes.
shaping where your life goes. And that could be one of the soul family members, not
Absolutely. Remember when I
necessarily.
said spirit and friends? I mean,
Yes.
family and friends.
Yes.
When I got there, I saw family and friends. This is people that I felt I know throughout the ages, throughout. I have no idea. I don't think any of us know exactly how old our spirit is because we're born
Right.
from star. You're absolutely right. We gravitate towards people here on Earth that have been with us before,
Yes.
and we want to stay with them here. And that's where maybe your soul family
Yeah.
comes
I've
in.
I've always said to people, I don't believe that there's anybody of any significance in your life who you have not known before.
Absolutely. 100%. I agree with that. 100%.
That's very,
Because it's real.
that's very, very reassuring though, I think, for people, because to be connected is such a beautiful thing. To have a recognition in another person, in another soul, is also a very special thing. And we should pay attention to those
Oh, yeah.
recognitions. All right, let's dive deeper into your life review. This is the part of near death experiences that I have the most fascination with, because I believe when people listen to these accounts, it
Yeah.
helps them to understand the ripple effect that they have on the world, and it helps them to understand the difference between doing something with intention and doing something without an intention. So, the first question I have for you about your life review is, after your near death experience, did you live your life differently because of your awareness of your life review? And if so, why?
Well, much differently because I wasn't afraid of death anymore. So the fear of death, as growing up when you're younger, you have more of a fear than you have as you get older. But I lost my fear of death when this happened to me when I was 42 years old. I had no longer did I have a fear of death. But there's so many other things like you're talking about, ripple effects, you know, that that changes in your life, like kindness, the service. The one thing about that is that, see, I believe it's not necessarily like a classroom, but I believe when you do good for some others, and it doesn't have to be people that's in your family. It could be strangers even. Um, I believe God sees that as a reward. Our spirits grow through that process. While we're here, through these life cycles, we go through a process of enlightenment. And our enlightenment has to do a lot with how we react and treat situations and other people. You know, I I, I became more. I think I became more of a kinder person after.
Wow. So let's move into your hall of events. All right. So they're showing you all of these different events. So I want to
Yeah.
go back to two of them in particular. No, so number one, they show you what you ultimately know now in hindsight is 9/11. So
Yes.
when you
Yes.
see that and you have no idea from 30 years ago what this was, when it was going to be, except for you knew it was the Twin Towers because you had been in it and you recognized
Oh,
that.
I was in it many times.
So
I was
did
in
you come
the
back and talk to other people, and did you just have some idea, or did you think, oh,
I,
maybe this won't really happen? What did you think?
to that point. Remember, I said we went right past my near death experience and went to 9/11.
So
at
you
that
knew it
point.
was somewhere in the future, right?
Did I talk to people about it? I was afraid to talk to anybody.
I
It was
bet
the
you were.
9/11 that gave me the inspiration when I seen it happen to write the book. I actually wrote my first book in 2002. And that gave me the insight because that's when I said, this is real. This thing is real. I said to myself, I mean, if you would have come up and said anything like that to anybody, they would have thought you're out of your mind.
Did you tell
And
anybody at all, even your wife?
oh, I told everybody that I know personally, my wife and friends, stuff like that. The
So there
thing
must have
is,
been a bunch of people who were like, "Oh my gosh," when that actually happened.
well, I told them about my near-death experience, about the whole thing. They were more interested in what's happening, what happens to them after they die, you know?
So when you were in the Hall of Records and you
Yeah,
got to see the future,
right.
were there parts of that vision that you did not understand?
Some of the, when I told you they show you outcomes of things,
Mm-hmm.
of different planes of,
Mm-hmm.
of choice. So you could have
Yes.
a choice with 10 different planes on it, right?
Yep.
What would happen? Some of the things I didn't understand. Some of the things I saw was terrible. Burning cities. Some of the things were very, very bad. I So I didn't understand what that was. I understood it as it was burning cities. Um, that's why I believe a lot of that stuff I saw on the other side pertained to these times. But there's things in the universe. There was things I didn't understand.
All right. So you talked in the beginning about raising our level of the spirituality and the
Right.
importance of that. So, what can people do? Because I would imagine a lot of people that are watching this today watch because they're now on a spiritual awakening, a spiritual journey. They may be very far along on their journey, but there are probably a lot of people watching who are like, how am I supposed to do this? How am I supposed to raise my spirituality? So, can you give people some practical tips on what they can do?
Well, yes, 100%. Kindness and service is number one.
Okay.
So I believe we get our little check marks from God for that. And there's a whole bunch of other things you can do. What I mostly don't want to see people do now is worry about what the future will bring. Um, our future, we're already on an ascension plane where there's an awakening going on that's never happened before in history. This plane is going to get so strong with enlightenment, everything is going to be fine. Like I said, I think we're going to go through some rough patches, but I think the outcome is going to be fine. I don't think people should worry about, bombs, having to worry about, nuclear weapons, because who's ever running this thing, either side of the globe or whatever, they don't want to destroy where they live or run either. So I believe that part won't happen. Do I believe that wars? Yeah, wars could happen, things like that. But I want people to understand, I believe the enlightenment part, I'm preaching nothing but good stuff. So I want the positivity to be there in everything, because that's
Yeah.
what will bring enlightenment in. If people live on the positive plane, if people live in the positive and not the negative, enlightenment will come to them automatically. But you have to call for enlightenment. You have to pray for enlightenment. Everyone in the world should learn the Jabaz prayer of Jabaz. Everyone should learn that prayer. It's a self-enlightening prayer, and you could bring enlightenment right to you through that prayer. I mean, so there's enlightenment is being okay. This is the most better. Live as God would live. Give of yourself as God would give. Love others as God loves you. and you'll have full enlightenment, because you'll really never know what that love is until we do, pass over. It's like walking through a door. It's it's wonderful. It's like, that's why people ask me if I'm afraid of dying. I never would fear death whatsoever any anymore because of that. I got to see what's on the other side. And so those three things: live peace, live with peace in your mind through kindness and service to others, live on the light path, the right side, and just stay in the enlightenment, because our earth, believe it or not, reacts to negative. This is hard to understand, this part. And it was hard for me to understand at the beginning, but I really understand it well now. Our earth reacts to negativity. And remember, I told you, our earth is a living spirit. She lives and breathes. A Mother Earth. It's Mother Earth. We only exist because of her here in body. This is not really us. This here thing is just the casing that we're in. So, but while we're here, we need this body, and we need to keep it in good shape. You can see I got to get back into the diet. I started anyway. See if that works. But live on the bright side of things. That's all. Live in the light. Help when you can. I know a lot of people say, "Well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do this." There's nothing to help it. If I see an old person, walking and needs some help to their car, I walk over and help. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's an easy thing to do. It's a gesture of love. And one gesture of love begets another, and another, and another, and another. And that's what it's all about. That's how simple it is. And God is love.
It's beautiful. So you mentioned God a little bit, and we talked about your life review. Who judged you during your life review?
I judged me. I judged myself. The first time I got to see the other side of the wrong I was doing, or the right I was doing. See, when you do wrongs in your life, you don't realize the trauma you could cause someone else. And I judge myself. I don't believe there's a harsh judgment by God. I don't believe there's a devil. If there's a devil, the devil's here on earth. They're a group of people, if there is one. I didn't see no form of any devil. I didn't see no fire and flames. All I felt and was on the other side was love. And I wasn't an altar boy, believe me. Growing up, I can tell you that. I wasn't an altar boy. I mean, so, but I wasn't a very bad person either at the same time. All I know, when I felt that pain that I caused others, I felt that side of the story. See, we don't understand that until we cause it and actually feel it on ourselves. Maybe if it's caused on ourselves, we'd understand it better, you know?
Right.
So that would be my answer for that.
You also mentioned that one of the really important things that we need to do is you need to learn how to develop your intuition. So can you
Yeah.
again give us some practical tips on how to do that?
Yeah. First of all, usually your first choice, most of the times, I would say 9 out of 10, your first choice is your right choice. The choice that just automatically comes to you without you thinking about it. 9 out of 10. Now, if you have, let's say you just made a choice, and very rarely this happens, but the first choice most of the time is right, but on an occasion, it could be wrong. So when you make the wrong choice, and all of a sudden that intuition starts popping in, this is not the right thing, it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong. It's not saying it's wrong, but you're feeling it's wrong. You're feeling it's wrong. And that's what I believe is that little angel sitting on this shoulder. They say you had an angel on one shoulder and devil on the other, you know, but I think that the angel outweighs everything in your
Well, you were
life.
kind of talking about Oren, was that
Yeah. Or,
about
or,
him? It reminded me of Jiminy Cricket, the way you were describing him earlier.
yeah.
So do
I
we
mean,
all
that's the
have a
only way
Jiminy
I can
Cricket like
explain it. I
whispering
mean,
in our ears, trying to help and guide us?
well, we all have strong intuitions, right?
So we're in an ascension time and we're going towards the fifth dimension.
The fifth
So,
dimension is enlightenment.
okay,
That
and
is
then the
enlightenment.
parallels, how do those work in?
Well, the parallels are different. The parallels work in our choices.
Okay.
Remember, these are different dimensions, that they're different planes of choice. Every choice has an outcome, right? So if you look at you make up your mind to do one thing one way, there is that way, yes. But there's sometimes there's three other ways, or sometimes there's five other ways, or sometimes there's 10 other ways. These other ways are out there already. They're out there in line. It's for you to choose. And that's why you got to be very careful there, because you have to stay. That's how you build your spirit. Your spirit grows. Remember, I told you, through a process of choice. It's a level of ascension through a process of choice of enlightenment. So if your choices are on the right path of light, your spirit will get stronger and stronger. I believe there's a point that where you don't come back anymore. There's a point that we might turn into angels someday. But for the time being, we're the angels, I guess, assistants. I don't know exactly that part.
Well, I love it. This has been such a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate you not only sharing your near death experience, but entertaining me with asking all of these deeper questions and also sharing some things that you've never shared before. I
Yeah,
think it
and
takes
several things I
it
never.
takes a lot. It takes a lot of, I think, bravery to share these stories with the world because,
Yeah,
people like to judge everything. And so I wanted to just say how grateful I am for this time with you to be able to really connect. And I just appreciate what you're doing in the world. So if people want to find you and connect with you,
Eh,
how can they do that?
okay. So yeah, that's my website is Bill Tortorella Tortorella.com. Simple, just my name.com. My email is billtortorella@gmail.com.
And I'll put this stuff in the show notes for everybody. Yeah.
My newest book is called The Ninth Level of Enlightenment, The Wisdom of the Light. And I'm on Facebook, Bill Tortorella. I'm on Instagram, Bill Tortorella. I
Wonderful.
answer people's questions every day.
Well,
And that's pretty good. I believe I've been trying to do that and help people through times of decision and things like that as well. Or people might have a question, that they might be concerned about. And I do say this, if people do get a chance to read my book, the first 48 pages that give you a big enlightenment. Now that shows how we're interlinked to the other side. So I explained the whole near-death experience, but if I went through that whole other side, we'd take another 3 hours on the podcast.
right. Well, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for what you're putting out into the world. Thank you for what you're doing to try and help raise us to a new level of consciousness so that we can have this utopia that you feel is coming. I really appreciate you, Bill.